Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are watching or listening. This is the Holistic Monitor, and I'm your host, Nick Sconia. The Holistic Monitor podcast is a weekly show featuring guest interviews with discussions about self-discovery, philosophy, spirituality, and our relationship with the world around us. Your support this last year has meant the world to me, and you can now go to holisticmonitor.com to support the topics you want to hear with our new show merchandise, featuring hats, t-shirts, hoodies, and more. You can also support us by simply sharing your favorite episode with your followers. And with that, let's get the show started. Andrew DeAngelo, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And you're heavily involved in cannabis advocacy.
That's
and also kind of promoting as well, it sounds like, people to kind of find their way into business successfully while giving back in a way with either medicinal or experiential type of enterprises. Could you explain a little bit about what you're into and what you do?
Thanks. Well, I'm proud to say this is my 40th year in the cannabis trade. I started when I was in high school, like not too many people, perhaps some of your listeners. But I decided to make a life out of it and a career out of it. In those days, if you were in the trade, you were breaking the law in a pretty serious way. And I did not like breaking the law. So I became an activist with my older brother, Steve DeAngelo, and we helped legalize medical cannabis in California in 1996, and then we did it in our hometown of Washington, D.C. in 1998. When the federal government would not allow the city to implement that program in 1998, that made us a little more than a little angry and bitter. And so we moved to California, where we were able to legally trade in medical cannabis. And we were awarded in 2005, 2006, we were awarded one of the first retail medical cannabis dispensary licenses ever awarded to anybody in the world. The city of Oakland was the first jurisdiction to do that in California or anywhere. And we started Harborside Health Center in 2006. And for 15 years, I owned and operated that company and learned just about everything there is to learn about owning and operating a cannabis company. We started out with one retail shop, and when I left, we were a publicly traded company with a big farm and 8 retail shops and a manufacturing center. Now that organization is called State House. It's one of the larger companies still here in California trading in cannabis. So that I exited when we went public because I don't run public companies. That's not what I do. And I started a nonprofit organization called Last Prisoner Project, which helps free cannabis prisoners. And I started this little consulting business I have with a few other super experienced, long track record consultants that I've teamed with. And we offer entrepreneurs the opportunity and to build their cannabis businesses, their psychedelic businesses, whether that be a plant touching business, a licensed business, if you will, or whether that be an auxiliary business. We help entrepreneurs do that. And so people can reach out to me at my website, andrewdeangelo.com, if you're looking to start a business, and we can talk more about how I can help.
That's great. And that's quite a lot of involvement and achievements as well. That's good to have on your consulting hat. You've done it and you know how to do it.
Right. That's, I think, it's a new industry, right, Nick? I mean, it's only been around. If you call 2012 the starting of the industry, when Colorado and Washington State legalized for adult use, that's really when a for-profit industry emerged, and it's new. And I was already in the industry for 6 years before that happened. So repetition is how we learn how to do things in life and how we
Right.
learn how to do things in business. Certainly talent and vision and education, all those things are important, but practice is really what it all comes down to. So me and my team bring that I think that's our big differentiator from everybody else.
Yeah. And I didn't hear much about luck there. It's a matter of thought about
Well,
that, right? A little bit, maybe a little
uh,
dusting of luck.
yeah, there's always luck in one's life journey, and it plays a role. I've had both good luck and bad luck in my career and in my life, as everybody has, and
Mhm.
certainly luck is part of the winning formula of any entrepreneur.
Yeah. And well, in this with cannabis, it's a long time coming too. This is something that people wanted, but and dreamed about, but thought never. And I do remember, at least in the early 2000s, when it was, quote unquote, medically legal in California, but there were, one doctor in the Northern California that would write a script or something like that. It was still pretty illegal as far as the federal government was concerned. So very
And
difficult,
still is to this day, as far
and
as,
still is.
yeah, as far as the federal government's concerned. But yes, so it was pioneering work, and as I'm sure you and many of your other guests can attest to, pioneering is both exhilarating thing to do, and you take a few arrows in the back also. It kind of cuts both ways.
Yeah, and as far as benefits out of cannabis, there's just a ton of medicinal benefits from cannabis.
Oh,
Um,
goodness. Yeah, I'm in the camp that pretty much all use is medicinal, even if the
mhm,
intention is not, I'm sick and I need this as medicine. But we all have an endocannabinoid system, which is a system within the body that basically produces cannabinoids within the body. And that
mhm,
system, when you take external cannabinoids like cannabis plants and you combine it with the internal system, incredible healing effects can occur, especially when folks have cancers, tumors, or
mhm.
epilepsy, or seizures, or paraplegic, anything with spasms.
Right.
Cannabis is really good for glaucoma, sight, anxiety, depression,
Mhm.
insomnia. The list goes on and on. And because it's relatively speaking a mild intoxicant, it's available. So it's accessible to just about everybody. It's a little bit different than ayahuasca, which you know perhaps not every single person is going to be able to, do
Right. Right.
or access. Whereas cannabis is something that grows everywhere. It's easy to access and it's available, and it's been used medicinally for many thousands of years. And so,
Right.
and science backs all this up. If the cannabis has probably been studied more than any other plant in the plant kingdom,
Yeah.
and other countries, particularly Israel, and have done a lot of research that clearly demonstrates cannabis as medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think, the prohibition really just wasn't ever going to be a thing. It was something that, I remember taking a train from Colorado to Pennsylvania, and I looked out the window, and along the train tracks, it was probably hemp, but, it's just so many plants. And I was like, wow, it's just
Yeah,
everywhere,
right.
wild. It's
Yes.
just growing. It's just
Yeah,
there.
right. In the old days, they called that ditchweed.
Yeah.
And in the 40s, during the World War II, the federal government actually, in the middle of prohibition, they started a program called Hemp for Victory, and they encouraged farmers to. They needed rope for the Navy.
Right.
They needed
Right.
rope for the Navy, and so hundreds of thousands of acres of hemp were planted and made into rope, and a lot of that ended up becoming wild hemp in these
Yeah.
ditches, along the side of the road and the train tracks and on the side of the fields where they were grown. And the plant propagates very well,
Yeah.
and
It does.
it's still there, and that it's
Right.
not worth smoking most of it, but
Right.
it it grows like a weed.
It's a weed. Yeah. Now, you also mentioned psychedelic retreats. I did have a guest on that has a psychedelic retreat down in Mexico,
Hmm.
Sayulita Resort retreat, and I believe they work with mushrooms.
Yes.
What would be your what is your ideal psychedelic as far as for a retreat for somebody that needs maybe to have an experience to kind of break through some kind of bad pattern that they're in?
Well, it's a very big question you've just asked. You know,
Your preference, though. Yeah.
well, I like to break psychedelics down into synthetic psychedelics and what I call master plants, or what
Mm.
a lot of people in this space call master plants. There's a great book actually called The Master Plant Experience by Dr. Maya Seetreat, and she wrote a great book about this too. And so and different compounds have really different therapeutic uses. If but psilocybin is in clinical trials right now for PTSD, intractable depression, and end of life.
Mm-hmm.
There are other compounds that MDMA is in trials right now for similar uses. Those two compounds are the farthest along on clinical trials. The multidisciplinary associate and the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies.
There we go.
They are the leaders that have been the leaders for decades of the psychedelic sort of movement, and they're the ones doing the clinical trials on MDMA. I think John Hopkins or somebody else is doing
Mm-hmm.
psilocybin, and so psilocybin is the one that's out there the most right now, probably the most accessible.
Yeah.
My older brother Steve has a retreat center in Jamaica at the Rastafarian Indigenous Village, and called Life as a Ceremony, and they do psilocybin primarily there. Jamaica also, like Mexico, these it's legal,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly for indigenous folks in Jamaica, which Rastafari Indigenous Village obviously is. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you have different kinds of flavors in the psychedelic retreats. You have the kind of the luxury retreats, I call them, where you're kind of at a fancy resort with a hot tub and a pool, and you have different facilitators do it in a different way, but there's usually a day of preparation, then there's the experience themselves, and then there's a day or two of integration. Sometimes you do more than one experience during the course of a few days. Sometimes you only do one experience. And then there's more, I would say, ceremonial experiences that are less luxurious, but more like Rastafarian Indigenous Village. They
Mm-hmm.
are RIV, and that is, you're embedded with a tribal group, a group of people that live on the land and off the land and from the
Mm.
land, and you get to experience that and be with that. And they've built some beautiful accommodations that, air conditioning, and the kind of accommodations people are used to, but it's not with the infinity pool and
Mm.
the
Right.
water slide and all of that. It's in a beautiful lush farming village that's a
Yeah.
working village, and so that's another kind of experience. And then you've got deep down in Peru, and way down in the global south, you have the ayahuasca and these other ceremonies that Westerners and global northerners can experience and do experience and have for a long time, decades now. And that's again another even deeper level of experience. So those are sort of and I'm sure I'm missing some. That there's retreats are sprouting up like mushrooms all over right now. But I think it's great that this is happening in the world, and that you can go to a place, and it might cost some money. I know that my brother's retreat is a lot more affordable than some of the others, but you can be in a container to have a great experience, or at least a profound experience, or a healing experience. it's not all fun and games with psychedelics, especially if you're taking, medium to larger doses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so people, these are safe containers to have those experiences in, to be educated on what to expect, to go into it with intention and respect and reverence for the plants and the people that are holding space in the ceremony, or the experience for participants. And really, you couldn't do that 30 or 40 years ago. You couldn't go, it wasn't, you had to go to a Grateful Dead show or something, right? Or an acid test, or a fish show or something. And you would learn, you take some acid and you learn,
Right. Right.
Now those containers are not terribly dangerous, but they're not, also ideal, especially for
Right.
first time experiences, maybe, and for certain types of people, certain types of personalities. And so now these places exist where people can go and have more confidence, and feel safer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it was 1965 when the Warlocks that became the Grateful Dead. It was maybe yesterday or today or something like that. Really, right around now, that they did their first San Jose acid test,
Yeah.
and that you could say was a melting pot of minds and ideas and experiences, and definitely to that time period, 1965, bringing on a whole new level of experience for the world with LSD. And of course, that has had its own ups and downs. If you go to a Grateful Dead concert, it's a gamble as to what kind of experience you're going to have, or if you did. Could be good, could be bad. It really just depended on your
Oh yeah.
environment and those around you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And of course your reaction to the environment, which is really important.
Yep.
What I like about the retreats is that you're in this place where you know that it's safe.
Yeah.
I just think that that's one of the biggest things to, paranoia and potentially getting behind the wheel of a car, all these things that happen that you'd be out and about in the world, having these experiences that may not end well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely, you're absolutely right. And it's something that everyone listening to this should take heart and listen to. Definitely, psychedelics are not something to do in public places that you're not familiar with, if you're not experienced. That certainly don't operate any machinery. Certainly don't drive a car.
Right. Right.
You'll probably have a hard time ordering an Uber. I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
Looking at a long walk.
yeah. One
Yeah.
of the nice things about psychedelics is they do give you energy so you can take long
Right.
walks.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I was when I was younger, I was able to smoke marijuana no problem, socially. I had did a lot of psychedelics, and then I lost my ability to do to recreationally use pretty much anything.
Hmm.
Um, if I don't create it as a sacrament and do it in a minute amount, it overwhelms me. So for
Yep.
me, I know my reaction. I know what my medicine is and isn't, and
Yep.
I've
Yep.
learned that maybe the hard way, but I definitely learned that certain things I need to take
Yep.
with a lot of reverence and really preparation.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because it's one of the things that the author, Dr. Maya, talks about in her book, The Master Plan Experience, is approaching these with reverence and respect. I'm doing a little micro dose regimen right now where I live. For all intent and purposes, psilocybin's legal. It's not.
hmm,
It's decriminalized, but and so I take a microdose, but I do the same thing. I have a ritual I do. I have an intention I set. I say a prayer. I give thanks to the medicine and the plants and the earth and the sky and the water and the stars,
mhm.
and everything. And I'm taking a dose that is imperceptible to me in terms of any kind of psychoactivity, but I still have that same approach, even when I'm taking a larger dose that is psychoactive. The approach doesn't really change that much, uh, because it's you'll have a better experience, right? It's sort of like, I know it's hard for us in the way we're brought up in America and the Western world, modern world. It's hard for us to believe that plants have consciousness and they have beings, and they are themselves alive, and have and can talk, have messages, have things to say, have power, contain power.
Right.
I mean, I just wrote an article in Forbes about psychedelics and master plants. And, I talk about coffee. Coffee is a master plant. It's not psychedelic, right? It is psychoactive. And if you hang around the hotel coffee bar when the coffee, runs out, you'll find a bunch of unhappy people that are clearly affected by it. So that means that plant has power, right? So and when you approach things with power, you should do it with respect, or else you might get run over by the car. Look both ways before you cross.
Well, and I came into doing various different kinds of psychedelics by way of Carlos Castaneda.
Oh yeah.
Food of the Gods, Terence McKenna.
Oh yes.
With an idea that that's what my goal was when I started to try to make it a sacrament, but I was still very recreational, and it backfired on me. That's a nice story, but it backfired on me in great ways that I was put in my place, and now I'm very respectful.
Right.
Of it, as I should be.
Right.
There's a lot.
It only takes once.
It only takes once. It took me many times, but I didn't get it into my head,
Well, sometimes we all have repetition, like we were saying.
Yes. Oh yeah. I ended up in the same spot many times, and I thought, here I am again.
I love that part of the Castaneda book where he's on the porch and you have to find your spot, and it takes him like 3 days, and then he just collapses from exhaustion, and the teacher comes out and says, "That's just fact."
Exactly. Now you're ready. Something that I'm following. I'm not following it terribly closely because I don't find that there's a lot of information on it. Maybe you've heard about it. I'm hearing more about it from Graham Hancock, who's kind of all over the place, on DMT studies that they're doing to investigate the world of DMT, that place that it takes you to. I believe it's being done in the UK, where they're long dosing people on DMT through a drip.
Wow.
I'd say you'd have to be say you have to be a very strong constitution psychonaut to be able to take on more than an hour. And I think that they do it for several hours.
Wow.
And the idea is to kind of investigate if people are having similar experiences and meeting similar things. Is there a way to open up communication with this other side or this other realm?
The elves.
The elves, exactly.
The elves.
Exactly.
We've all seen them.
So,
what are
so
those little? What are those little MFs?
Yeah. And that's like I'd say that's like the furthest afield that I've ever heard of anybody going into testing, as far as beyond the military tests of the 50s.
Right. Yes. Well, it's fascinating.
High doses of LSD.
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with that particular study, but I've done DMT, and I can tell you that just 10 or 15 minutes was quite the experience for me, and maybe an hour on my strongest day.
Right.
But I mean, there are psychonauts that are far more developed than I am. And like my older brother, for instance, he might be able to be in a study like that, do something like that. He's got sort of that constitution, I've met, as I've done a little bit more work in the psychedelics scene, the last year or two, I've met a lot of people who you know, this is what they do on the weekends. You know,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and they spend time in these realms, you know, significant time, because they have the Constitution, they have the I guess, I don't know, the brain power,
Ways.
or whatever it is, you know,
Yeah.
and so they can, and sometimes these folks are able to report back and articulate what it was like over in that realm. Dr. Maya did that a bit in her book. I
Yeah.
found she was real good at that. So, you know, I know that the elves are there. I've seen the elves, and I've seen them playing with the little shapes and doing the little things. You know, all the,
Organizing.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the little, like, and it's like they're busy. They're definitely busy. They've never talked to me. I haven't had that experience.
Mm.
I haven't. They've definitely given me mischievous energy. I've seen them laugh and you know, be, they don't seem unhappy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But they also seem, you know, I don't know. My theory is that they have something to do with, you know, dark matter, time, space, how it gets held together,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're the ones that are making the whole thing expand, the universe expand. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're up to something, man. So I mean, I'm glad someone's studying the elves.
Right. Yeah. And
um,
well, that's
uh,
the thing. It's everybody's having that same experience,
yeah, I mean, most of
which
the
is very
people
interesting.
I know, or you'll a lot of people have the double sky or triple sky,
Mm.
where they'll look up into, especially at nighttime, you'll look at the moon and the sky will open up and you'll see a sky behind the sky, and
Mm.
then that
Mm.
sky will open up, you'll see a sky behind that sky. I've had that
Wow.
experience.
Yeah.
I know people. I've had conversations with multiple folks that have had that experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are definitely commonalities, right? It's and it'll be fun to learn. Is it has it does it have to do with the common receptor? Does it have to
Right.
do? Does it, is it perception? Is it reality?
Right.
Is it
Just dimensional.
is it,
Yeah.
yeah? Is it simply a transcendence of time and space? You know, it does feel like you're in a wormhole,
Mm-hmm.
a bit, time and space wormhole or hyperspace. It does have a hyperspace kind of feel,
Yeah. Yeah.
to it. But you know, these are mysteries that we get to unlock now. You know, that prohibition, I hope, will end once and for all. And you know, the promise of this is that we can unlock all of these secrets and we can start to really learn exactly what's going down. You know, and it's just it's even before an embryonic stage, really.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know, almost. You know,
DNA. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah. It's part of who we are.
yeah. I just think, you know, I know that you talk a lot about transcendence and spirituality and things on the program, and you know, before I took psychedelics, I was basically an atheist.
Mm.
But
Mm.
my very first, and cannabis was I also part of this, because I had both my first cannabis and my first psychedelic experience kind of in parallel. They were very I had been taking cannabis for a few months before for my first LSD trip, but you know, not
Mm-hmm.
like years. So
Yeah.
and you know, it brought me in touch with two things that I know. One is this is not all random accident.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and the second thing I know is that's all I know. um, uh, uh,
Yeah.
and I'm in awe, and I'm happy to be here
Yeah. Yeah.
for as long as I can be.
I think there's a philosopher that said, the only thing I'm sure of is that I am, and of course, what level are you? But
Right.
yeah,
Whew.
but absolutely,
Right.
you know that you are, that you exist. I exist.
Right.
Let's start there. You know, and
Right.
a lot of it is investigation into the self, and I find that sometimes we get really caught up in emotional dilemmas within ourselves,
Yeah.
past issues and things like that that kind of get us stuck and locked in. And the a lot of these things can create a breakout, a way to get out of ourselves, in a sense, to break the shell, to free ourselves of binds that may be holding us down or holding us to something in our past. And to me, it helps in liberation and in freedom to allow us to be more, to experience more of who we are, maybe from a different aspect or side, viewing from outside of ourselves, all that kind of thing. As long as there's tools that come out of it, I feel like it's a benefit.
Well, absolutely, and like I'm a big meditator. I meditate a lot, and I haven't done it my whole life. I've just done it in the last several years, but I've gotten really into it now. It's a practice I do several times a day, and it brings me closer to these things.
Mm-hmm.
The meditation is I've I've probably put in, I don't know, 1,000 hours of meditation. I'm not very skilled at it.
Mm.
There's no such, but meditation is about the going back and forth between being in your head, thinking about the past or the future, like you just said, or being in the present moment right now and just breathing and letting the heart beat. Because the breath and the heartbeat, that happens by itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not, we're not, it's beyond us. It's
Yeah.
beyond us. So and therefore I am, and therefore that's all I know is I am.
Right.
And so I find that, because I'm one of these people, I'm in my head a lot. So I am thinking about the past. I am regret.
Mm-hmm.
I've got all kinds of beautiful memories and awful regrets, right?
Yeah.
And then the future, I've got plenty of dreams and that excite me, and plenty of worries that terrify me.
Yeah.
And I think about it, right? I
Yeah.
think about it, get in my head, and then when I go onto my meditation space and take that time for myself, I go inside and, you know, I experience the present moment. I don't experience the present moment for the entire duration of the meditation. I go back and forth between being in my head and experiencing the present moment. And then practice makes, you get a little bit better, you get a little bit better, you get a little bit better, and you can go longer and you can go longer, and you get, and then you find these other benefits happening
Mm-hmm.
where you realize, wow, I'm a little more calmer generally in my life. I'm sleeping a little bit better. I'm relating to my partner without being an a-hole about it. I'm more sensitive to my children. Um,
Right.
and I think microdosing, a lot of people report similar kind of things, and of course, a significant dose or a medium-sized dose can, like you said, accelerate awareness and insight.
Mm-hmm.
If you can also integrate that, this is the difference between the recreational. A lot of times with the recreational use, there's no integration afterwards, right?
Right.
You don't think about the next day. You have breakfast and you're down to the next stop on the fish tour.
Right.
But if you integrate it, right, and you think, well, gosh, I was thinking about how wound up I am during my trip, or during my experience. I'm trying not to use the word trip, during my experience, and I realize I'm too uptight, and
Yeah.
I need to lighten up, man.
Right.
And so then if you integrate that and say, okay, how am I going to lighten up? Let's take some steps to lighten up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's like operationalize
Yeah.
lightening up. If you don't do that part, I won't say you wasted the trip, but you haven't. There's an opportunity cost you've taken on there. Because, like I went to the last Dead and Company show with my older brother, and we always do our psychedelics, and it was a healing experience for both of us in different ways. And I remember the next day I wrote about it. I immediately wrote about it. I logged in my journal what insights I was getting from the experience, and how might I be able to act on those, all right, and continue. So and by doing this, I think this is one of the things that psychedelics hold a lot of promise. I think we're going to get, might take a while because prohibition and everything, but I think we'll get to the point where people just learn this. They learn you have to prepare, you do it, and then you integrate. And that's what psychedelics are. It's in the indigenous tradition is very much like this. It's ceremonial, so it's a lot. It's not in a therapeutic clinical setting like a lot of our psychedelic healings are right now are in the West. But same basic idea though. We create a container. We come into the container with the intention. We have the experience. We leave the container and integrate what happened in the container outside of the container. So we leave. Our lives are transformed after the container. So I think that's. I mean, hopefully you'll learn that in high school.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
101.
Yeah. Well, that's something about culture too, is that we don't really know where our culture is headed. There's a lot of these adjustments that we can see. Things are changing. Socially, things have definitely adjusted from when you were younger. I'm sure you've noticed there's been major adjustments to people's behavior, for the good or bad, depending on
what you're this
paying
thing
attention
right
to.
here.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't know where we're headed as far as what our culture is going to look like in 300 years. Maybe it will have this accepted experience like native cultures typically have.
Will we
you're going to become a man now, or you're going to become an adult now. Here's this experience so that you can meet spirit, so you can do these things and become more whole.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I hope we're not part machine, part human, and there's no such thing as a purely organic human anymore. I mean, I hope and I think the plants and the compounds are. This is a romantic, mythological kind of perspective, but they're coming for us to help us avoid that outcome. I hope. I hope that's one of the promises. There's no single magic bullet that's going to save humanity from itself. Okay, it's something we have to decide to do together. We just psychedelics can help us make that decision. See, and then maybe give us a chart of course, what sets the clock at zero again? What's the historical event? It's not going to be, will it be the birth of a Messiah, like what started the last clock at zero? Will it be everybody on the planet taking mushrooms together at the same time? Will it be something else?
Disclosure.
Who knows?
Disclosure.
Yeah. Who knows what it'll be?
A greater cosmic community, perhaps, will be the thing that wakes people up.
Maybe. Maybe
that's on the horizon.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe it's oh wow, we're not alone. Who knows? It could be. It could totally be that. Absolutely, I could imagine that.
Worldwide experience.
Yeah, I mean, like, whoa, intense, right? Zero. I mean, like everything, like everything before. It's not relevant enough to keep
Right.
counting anybody, keep
Right.
counting that way. Yeah. Imagine
Yeah.
the significance of that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so like I hope I see it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of it, is that maybe we just want to, maybe we want to manifest that reality. And maybe that's what we've gotten out of our experiences, is that we want to manifest greater unity in the world. I had an experience on mushrooms where I realized that as a group, that the group that we're doing it, we were really wanting our friend to join. He was not there, and I was like, you're missing this. You've got to get here. You've got to be a part of this. And I think that part of what is gained out of that is that there's this group think, this group consciousness that's created. The Greeks had a similar
the
thing.
mycelium of your love for this person was kind of like reaching out and like wanting to connect.
Right.
That's
Yes,
beautiful.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
beautiful.
Something like, I was just dwelling on this today, that like COVID was this great worldwide attention, which is just a rare thing, that everybody kind of reacts somewhat similarly to something.
Yeah.
And that there was something that happened, rippled across the world, and contact, or finding out that that the ancients were right, perhaps would kind of bring us back on our calendar, bring us back to zero, like you said, coming back to where we were before, when we actually knew, oh, like the Mayans have many calendars, 8 calendars active.
Wow.
8 calendars based on all these different factors.
Right. Yeah.
And perhaps it's because they weren't disconnected.
Right.
They had contact. They were connected.
Right.
And we're in a world where we're just not connected.
No.
So what if we could gain that connection either through contact through other realms, or more physical and direct? But I think that would be a way to kind of bring a greater global community. I know it's a scary word for a lot of people.
Well, and I think also the ecology of the planet, and paying attention to that may bring us back to the
Might force us.
just the relationship that with nature. You know, like I when I grew up in the city. I've lived my whole life in either the city or the suburbs. I've never lived in the country. I've never lived in the jungle. I've never lived in the forest. I've never lived any place that's totally natural. The place I live now is in the hills of Oakland. It's got beautiful, hiking trails and wildlife and stuff, but it's
tame.
It's not the wild. Okay.
Right. It's tame.
And I'm a pretty enlightened dude. And I still know that I'm not connected. I'm not connected to nature the way and my ancestors and ancestors and ancestors had to be. Had to be. So so when I find myself in ceremony, or I find myself very close to people who are more connected, all right, who do live in nature, indigenous communities, or even like Rainbow Family, or I mean, even people like that, communities like that, I feel like a little alienated, because I'm not as connected to that natural relationship with the land, and then I want to listen and learn and be present and try to get deeper. But it's different for us in the north here, and the way we grew up, and typically, or the way I grew up. There's a big space of removal from that relationship, and I can. It's part. I think part of what you're talking about is when we are integrated back into that relationship again, it will actually resemble a zero. It'll be a circle. It'll be a round shape.
Right.
It won't be a pyramid shape like we have now, or or it'll be it'll probably be a round. It'll look like boobies, or it'll look like planets or moons, or
Right.
or
Yeah. The hoop, the sacred hoop.
yeah,
Yeah. The sacred
I
circle of
think,
life.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild, and that's the thing is we're removed. We're doing this. We're on the interwebs. Um, disconnected in a sense, but connected in a different way. It
Well,
seems that a lot
yeah.
of our technology has tried to take place of natural faculties. So instead of us communicating astrally, psychically, we're communicating through these devices. We're creating things that we innately already have, but we're doing it physically, which is pretty cool, actually.
Right. It would be good if it wasn't in spite of the intuitive,
Right.
because I think you're right. I think there's serendipity and intuition, and when you think of somebody you haven't talked to in 20 years, and then 2 days later you get a message from them, is that an accident? Is that coincidence? Or is that the laws of attraction working on a very atomical level almost, and so these are mysteries
Yeah.
but that I'm sure that I want to see people spend some time with and try to, because I think intuition and even telepathy and these things are even like, I know it's crazy to say, but like really, telepathy is something that seems science fiction, right? It doesn't. It seems that the realm of fantasy.
Yeah.
But it according to Einstein,
It's all connected.
yeah, man, it's like
Yeah.
totally. It's like it could be like walking.
Right.
It
Right.
could be, maybe.
Yeah, I would say it is, but I'm from a different camp, so
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I respect that camp though, because
Yeah.
I've seen into that, potentiality
Mm-hmm.
uh, under the influence of psychedelics,
Yeah.
and cannabis, really. I mean,
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
that what's within the realm of our of possibility and potentiality is so much more than any of us really think about that often. We're really in a very tight bubble of perception,
Yeah.
when you think about
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, a lot of it is. It's like we're in this realm, we're in this world. We woke up from a dream. Now we may have had something completely different going on in the dream that was fully engrossing, and we believed every minute of it. Then we woke up. Maybe we had some tendrils. Maybe we had a little thought of it, but it's slowly. The longer we are here, the less we remember that, and then vice versa. Maybe when you go to sleep, you're getting tendrils of what was going on during the day, but the longer you're there, the more you forget about this. And, it seems like a lot of experiences are the same way. Trauma, like positive or negative experiences, the further away you get from it, the less influence it has. And maybe a veil gets put over it and you forget about it completely. A lot of those things that come out of LSD experiences, mushrooms, while I remember quite a few of them, some of them, the power of it has dissipated, that has left. For me to go back and ignite if I want to, it's there. But
it.
it's
Yeah,
kind of, the longer I'm not there, the more I forget about it. So that
interesting.
separation has a factor on our faculties. But for me, I found that asking my subconscious or asking myself to give me these abilities to the best of my ability so that I can utilize them in some way is very helpful. Just asking. It's a real simple thing. Your subconscious just starts working like a little elf. Just starts going to work, trying to make sure that you're connected, that you know who's going to call next, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm glad you said that. That's a good reminder for me to have for my meditation practice. Just ask.
Just ask. Yeah, it's like active prayer, basically.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love that.
Now, you also do advocacy for what is this? It's through prisons. Is that right? Prisoner advocacy.
One of the big problems we're having in the cannabis and psychedelic community, more cannabis because cannabis is actually legal in so many places now, is people are still locked up in prison for something that's now legal.
Yeah.
So I know a young man. He's in Illinois. Illinois is legal for adult use. They're legal for medical. He's been in prison 8 years in Illinois, and he's got a 23-year sentence.
Wow.
And that's just one of thousands of people that have stories like that across the country, whether they're in state lockup or federal lockup. And so Last Prisoner Project tries to get them out. And it's a very hard thing to do, because once you've exhausted all your appeals and you're convicted of a crime in this country, the only way you can reverse that is with a pardon from a governor or a president.
Wow.
And governors and presidents are very reluctant to give stoners pardons. Or psychedelic carriers of the medicine, the penalties for an LSD lab are 20, 30 years people do for that sort of thing, and it's tragic. And so my brother and I co-founded the organization, and we wanted to do something about it. And so Last Prisoner Project was born about 5 years ago. What one of our superpowers is, because we have so much experience and we owned and operated so many cannabis companies, we know how to raise money from the industry. So we went to the industry and we basically used a combination of innovative programming and shame to get people to participate in raising money for us. We hired a staff, a lot of lawyers, so a lot of defense attorneys, and a lot of business development folks to keep the money spigots going on, and then some folks that take the money we collect and give it to people, prisoners and their families. And so that's really the only three things Last Prisoner Project does: get people out of prison, raise money, and give the money away. I'm proud to say we've gotten quite a few people out of prison. It's dozens, not hundreds or thousands, which is a bummer. But those dozens, some of them were very long-term prisoners, 20, 30-year prisoners, and they're home. And a couple of them actually have cannabis brands in the legal marketplace right now. So I've been an advocate because I've been busted. I never took a serious case. My brother did, and it's had an impact on. When I was 9 years old, I went and visited my older brother in prison for cannabis. So it's had a big impact on my life and my family. And so, at the time, I had enough success as an entrepreneur that I was able to use some of that success to start the Last Prisoner Project. So that's what we did.
Awesome. That's amazing. Now, if somebody wants to help out, they can go to your website.
Yeah, lastprisonerproject.org. I think it's either Get Involved or Get Active is the tab. And if you're constrained on funds, there's a letter writing program. You can become a pen pal for the price of a stamp.
That's great.
You can become a pen pal for a prisoner. Super rewarding thing to do, because when you're in prison and you get a letter from a stranger who says, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. Hang in there. There's people out here working to get you out. What you did is not bad. You're not a bad person. You're not what you." It really lifts the spirit of that individual that's incarcerated, and it gives them a real lifeline. And so it's super important. And I encourage people to do that as well. That's almost more fun than giving money.
Yeah, right, right. There's a positive reward on both sides. So that's a win-win. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then your website as well is andrewdeangelo.com.
AndrewDeAngelo.com, reach
Okay.
out. And I also, if you're a journalist or a media person, that's where you can find my publicist also.
Awesome. And we'll have all that in the description as well. And really wanted to thank you for coming on today and talking about all this.
Thanks so much for having me on, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. And until next time, take care.
Be well.
All right. Bye-bye.